My son told me I could take whatever I want from your apartment, my mother-in-law declared after stealing $47,000 from my hidden savings. My retaliation shocked everyone, especially my husband. Before we begin, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you, and enjoy the story. Megan woke up that morning feeling like her life was perfectly on track. Sunlight filtered through the blackout curtains of their 7th-floor, two-bedroom condo, illuminating the neatly arranged furniture and the flawless order she maintained with meticulous care. Ian had already left for work at the architectural firm, leaving behind a faint scent of his cologne and a perfectly made bed on his side. 8 years of marriage had taught Megan to appreciate these moments of peace and quiet. At 43, she felt like she was at the peak of her life. She had a successful career as a sales manager at a large corporate firm, a stable marriage, and a condo she had bought mostly with her own money. Her ultimate dream of upgrading to a larger home was becoming more of a reality with each passing month. Megan walked over to the hallway mirror and adjusted her short, chestnut hair. The reflection showed a woman who knew exactly what she wanted out of life. The determined look in her brown eyes, her confident posture, the strict charcoal gray pantsuit, everything indicated a person accustomed to achieving her goals. She was especially proud of her savings, which she had been carefully accumulating for 4 years. In a small home safe, hidden behind some books on a shelf, lay a substantial sum, almost $80,000. Every month, she set aside a portion of her salary and bonuses, denying herself unnecessary expenses. The goal was clear: buy a 3-bedroom condo in the same neighborhood, but with a better layout. Ian treated her financial discipline with good-natured amusement. Working as a design engineer, he earned less than his wife, but he never had a complex about it. On the contrary, he often bragged to their friends that he had married a smart, practical woman who knew how to plan for the future. The only small cloud in their otherwise clear family sky was Valerie Dawson, Ian's mother. A 7-year-old, retired high school math teacher, she retained her habit of lecturing and controlling everything, even after retirement. However, with Megan, she had always been exceedingly sweet and delicate, which initially surprised Megan, given the stereotype of strict mothers-in-law. Valerie lived in her own 1-bedroom apartment on the other side of the city, but visited the couple regularly, about once a week. She always brought small gifts, homemade cookies, a jar of jam, or a bouquet of flowers from her cabin in the mountains. Megan appreciated the attention and always tried to be a welcoming hostess. On the Thursday when the strange occurrences began, Valerie arrived in an especially good mood. She brought a bag of apples from her cabin and sat in the kitchen drinking tea, asking about work and their weekend plans. Ian wasn't home from work yet, so the women were alone. "Megan, dear, could you show me that brooch Ian gave you for your birthday?" her mother-in-law asked, sipping tea from a delicate porcelain cup. "It was so beautiful, I remember." Megan was surprised. The brooch was indeed beautiful, an antique piece with small diamonds set in silver, inherited from her grandmother. But Ian definitely hadn't given it to her. It was a family heirloom from her side of the family. "Valerie, you must be confused. My grandmother left me that brooch. Ian gave me gold earrings for my birthday." Her mother-in-law looked flustered and waved her hand. "Oh yes, of course. My memory isn't what it used to be. I get everything mixed up. Earrings. Right, earrings." But Megan noticed how quickly Valerie changed the subject, launching into a story about her neighbors at the cabin. It was also strange how accurately she had described the brooch: small diamonds, silver setting, leaf-shaped. How could she know such specific details if she hadn't seen it? After her mother-in-law left, Megan decided to show the brooch to Ian. Maybe he really had told his mother about his wife's family jewelry. But when she opened her jewelry box, the brooch wasn't there. Megan tore the bedroom apart, checked every dresser drawer, and looked in her coat pockets. The brooch had vanished. The last time she distinctly remembered seeing it was 3 weeks ago, when she wore it to a corporate dinner at a restaurant. She had carefully placed it back in the jewelry box afterward, just like always. Maybe I forgot it somewhere, Megan thought, but immediately dismissed the idea. She was never forgetful, especially with valuables. Besides, the brooch wasn't something you wore every day. It was too formal for daily life. Ian came home late, exhausted after a meeting with clients. Megan decided not to upset him right away and postponed the conversation about the jewelry until tomorrow. Maybe the brooch would turn up, and her worries would be in vain. But the next day, her search yielded no results. Megan even called the restaurant where the corporate dinner was held, but they hadn't found anything. The manager politely promised to check again, but didn't offer much hope. That evening at dinner, Megan told her husband about the missing item. "Ian, did you happen to take my grandmother's brooch? Maybe you wanted to get it cleaned or something." Her husband looked up in surprise from his plate of food. "What brooch? I don't touch your jewelry, you know that. The silver one with the little stones. It's missing from my jewelry box." Ian frowned. "That's weird. Could the cleaning lady have taken it?" "Wait, no. We don't have a cleaning lady." "Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. Where could it have gone? And your mom was describing it in great detail today, saying you told her about it." "I don't talk to my mom about your jewelry." Ian shook his head. "Why would I? Maybe she just saw you wearing it once." Megan pondered this. Valerie could have indeed seen the brooch during one of her visits, but something still didn't fit into the overall picture. That weekend, Megan and Ian drove out to his mother's mountain cabin to help harvest apples. Valerie greeted them warmly, as always, and set a table in the yard under an old apple tree. The day was unusually warm for October. The sun softly illuminated the yard, with its neat garden beds and well-kept flower patches. While the men sorted the apples, placing them into storage crates, Megan helped her mother-in-law in the kitchen. Valerie took homemade pickles out of the fridge, sliced fresh bread, and chatted about cabin life. "Megan, dear, pass me my purse, please," she asked, nodding toward a stool by the window. "My glasses are in there. Without them, I'll be slicing these carrots until evening." Megan picked up the small leather purse and intended to just hand it to her, but at that moment, Valerie got distracted by the boiling kettle. The purse wasn't fully zipped, and when Megan lifted it, something shiny fell out. It was her brooch. Her heart began to race. Megan picked up the jewelry and examined it closely. Yes, it was definitely her grandmother's brooch. The recognizable leaf shape, the small diamonds in the silver setting, even the tiny scratch on the back that she remembered from childhood. "Valerie," Megan started cautiously, holding out the brooch. "Isn't this mine?" Her mother-in-law turned around and froze for a second upon seeing the jewelry in her daughter-in-law's hand, but she quickly pulled herself together. "Oh, Megan. Yes, of course, it's yours. I meant to tell you. I found it on my kitchen counter after your last visit. You must have forgotten it when you came over. I wanted to take it in to get fixed. The clasp felt a little loose, but then I forgot to mention it. Getting old. What can you do?" The explanation sounded logical, but Megan distinctly remembered that the last time they had visited Valerie was over a month ago, and the brooch had only gone missing a week ago. Furthermore, she never wore that piece of jewelry for everyday visits, only for special occasions. "Thank you for keeping it safe," Megan said, slipping the brooch into her jeans pocket. "But the clasp seems fine. It's not loose at all." "Ah, maybe I just imagined it," Valerie quickly agreed. "The main thing is that it's found. I was just thinking about how to tell you that such a beautiful thing was sitting at my place." Megan spent the rest of the day deep in thought. She didn't say anything to Ian yet. She didn't want to ruin the family harmony with suspicions, but the feeling that something was very wrong wouldn't leave her. At home, examining the returned brooch, Megan noticed another oddity. The jewelry was perfectly clean, as if it had recently been polished. Usually, after sitting somewhere for a few weeks, it gathered a light layer of dust, but here the silver shone like new. On Monday at work, Megan couldn't focus on her reports and client negotiations. Her thoughts kept returning to the strange story with the brooch. She even called her jeweler, who serviced her pieces, to ask if anyone had brought in a silver diamond brooch for repair. The jeweler said no. That evening, when Ian went to the gym, Megan decided to inventory all her jewelry. She opened the box and started going through the contents. The gold earrings were there, the necklace with the pendant, too. The rings. Stop. Another ring was missing. A simple silver ring with a small topaz that her friend had given her last New Year's. Inexpensive, but holding sentimental value. Megan thoroughly checked the entire jewelry box, looked under the lining, and emptied every compartment. The ring was gone. When she last saw it, she distinctly remembered wearing it 3 weeks ago, on the exact same day she wore the brooch to the corporate dinner. That meant both pieces of jewelry disappeared at the same time. This could no longer be chalked up to coincidence. Two pieces couldn't vanish and reappear on their own, especially considering one of them turned up in her mother-in-law's possession under highly suspicious circumstances. Ian returned from the gym, energized and in a good mood. "How are things, sunshine?" he asked, kissing his wife on the cheek. "You look a little down today." "Ian, another piece of jewelry is missing. My silver topaz ring." Her husband frowned. "Again? Maybe we really should get a more serious safe. The one we have is like a toy." "It's not about the safe. The ring went missing from the jewelry box, just like the brooch, and the brooch ended up at your mother's house. Mom explained that. You forgot it at her place." "Ian, I didn't wear that brooch to your mother's house, and I rarely wear it at all." Her husband sat on the edge of the bed and looked closely at his wife. "Megan, are you suspecting my mom of stealing your jewelry?" "I'm not suspecting anything. I'm just stating facts." "But that's absurd. Why would Mom want your jewelry? She has plenty of her own, and she is the most honest person in the world." Megan stayed silent. Arguing with her husband about his mother was pointless. He would never believe anything bad about Valerie. And honestly, Megan herself wasn't entirely sure of her suspicions yet. Maybe it really could all be explained by coincidences. But the very next day, a new, strange event occurred. Megan was coming home from work earlier than usual. A meeting with a client had been canceled. She was walking down the hallway to her 7th-floor apartment when she heard the voice of her neighbor, Gloria, from the 5th floor. "Megan, so glad I ran into you." Gloria was a curious and talkative woman, but well-meaning. As the building's unofficial neighborhood watch, she knew all the tenants and was always in the loop. "Hello, Gloria. How are you?" "Oh, doing fine. The grandkids came over the weekend. Listen, I wanted to ask you, does your mother-in-law come over often? Like, once a week or so?" "Why do you ask?" "Well, I saw her the day before yesterday, at your door around 2 p.m. I thought maybe you were sick, since she was visiting on a weekday." Megan was stunned. The day before yesterday, Tuesday, both she and Ian had been at work. Valerie hadn't mentioned any visit. "Are you absolutely sure it was her?" "Of course, I know her well. She was standing at your door, and then she went inside." "She has keys?" Megan asked slowly. "She doesn't have our keys." "That's weird then. Maybe you left the door unlocked?" "Although I distinctly remember hearing the deadbolt turn." Gloria shrugged and went about her business, while Megan stood frozen in the hallway. Valerie had been inside their apartment when they weren't home. How did she get in? Inside, Megan carefully inspected the front door. No signs of forced entry. The lock worked perfectly. The key turned smoothly and silently. But the neighbor had clearly heard the sound of the lock. "Ian," she said to her husband over dinner, "your mom came to our apartment on Tuesday afternoon. The neighbor saw her." "Tuesday?" Her husband looked surprised. "She didn't tell me anything. Maybe she wanted to surprise us? Clean up or cook something. How did she get into the apartment?" "She doesn't have keys." Ian chewed his food in silence for a moment. "Actually, I might have given her a spare set and forgotten to tell you." "How do you forget to tell me?" "Ian, this is our apartment. Don't yell. Mom isn't a stranger. If she drops by sometimes when we're not here, it's only to help out." Megan felt a surge of irritation. So, her husband gave his mother keys to their shared home without informing his wife, and he thinks that's perfectly normal? "Ian, the next time you make a decision regarding our home, give me a heads up first." Okay. Let's not make a mountain out of a molehill." But Megan couldn't calm down. 2 missing pieces of jewelry, one of which was found with her mother-in-law, visits to an empty apartment, keys she knew nothing about. It all added up to a highly disturbing picture. The next day, she intentionally came home from work early and meticulously inspected the entire apartment. Everything seemed to be in its place, but there was a lingering feeling that someone had been there. A faint scent of unfamiliar hand cream, barely noticeable shifts in the arrangement of items on her vanity, books on the shelf pushed back just a fraction of an inch. Megan opened the safe and counted the money. The large bills were all there, but it seemed to her that the stacks weren't lying exactly as she had left them. Then again, she could be mistaken. When you're nervous, you start seeing things. That evening, she decided to check her bank account online. She logged into the portal and pulled up her transaction history for the last month. Paycheck deposits, ATM withdrawals, utility payments, grocery shopping. Wait, this transaction looked strange. A withdrawal of $300 on Tuesday at 2:07 p.m. The exact same time the neighbor saw Valerie at their door, and the ATM was located just 2 blocks from their building. Megan scrutinized the transaction. The withdrawal was made using the physical card and a PIN. That meant someone knew her secret number. But who? Ian. But why would he secretly withdraw cash and not tell her? Or maybe Valerie? No, that was too fantastic. How would an elderly woman get her daughter-in-law's debit card? And more importantly, how did she get the PIN? Megan tried to recall any instance where she might have exposed her card or PIN in front of her mother-in-law. There were none. She had never even told Ian her PIN. She had it memorized. 4 digits, her late grandmother's birth year. No one else knew it. Although, once, Valerie had asked about her grandmother, inquiring about family history. Megan had shared stories about her relatives, maybe even mentioning dates. But to remember that and link it to a PIN code, that bordered on paranoia. Ian, she called out to her husband, who was watching the news in the living room. Did you withdraw money from my card on Tuesday? What money? I have my own card. I just see a $300 withdrawal in the transaction history. I don't remember taking it out myself. Ian looked away from the TV. Maybe it's a bank error. Or you just forgot. I'm not forgetful. Then go to the bank and figure it out. By the way, you should probably get the card reissued just in case. Megan nodded. She would definitely go to the bank tomorrow and get all the details on that transaction. But for now, she needed to carefully analyze everything that was happening. She grabbed a notebook and wrote down the missing jewelry. Brooch found with Valerie under strange circumstances. Ring still missing. Visit to empty apartment neighbor saw her on Tuesday afternoon. Valerie has keys, Ian confirmed, but kept it a secret. Money withdrawn from card on Tuesday. At the same time, mother-in-law was in the apartment. Each point individually could be explained away as a coincidence or a misunderstanding, but together, they formed an alarming picture. Megan closed the notebook and hid it in her desk drawer. For now, these were only suspicions, nothing more. But if her fears were confirmed, if Valerie truly was stealing from them, it would be a massive test for their family. She looked at her husband, who was peacefully dozing in front of the TV. Ian genuinely loved his mother and would never believe she was dishonest without ironclad proof. And maybe even with proof, he would defend her. Megan sighed and went to get ready for bed. Tomorrow was a new day, and perhaps it would bring clarity to this tangled situation. She wanted to believe that her suspicions were baseless and that the strange coincidences had simple explanations. But deep down, Megan already knew. Something in their well-oiled family life had gone terribly wrong. And it had everything to do with Valerie Dawson, the sweet elderly woman who had always been so kind to her daughter-in-law. At the bank, Megan's worst fears were confirmed. The $300 withdrawal was made using the original card and the correct PIN on Tuesday at 2:07 p.m. local time. The security officer, an older woman in a sharp suit, flipped through the printouts and shook her head. Unfortunately, the cameras at that specific ATM were down for maintenance exactly on Tuesday. But the transaction was definitely processed with your card. See, here's the terminal number, time, amount, everything matches up. Megan turned the newly issued plastic card with a new PIN over in her hands, feeling a boiling rage building inside her. $300 wasn't critical to their family budget, but the act of theft itself was infuriating, especially considering exactly who the thief turned out to be. And the old card is already blocked? She clarified. Naturally. The moment you filed the report, the card became invalid. Do not share your new PIN with anyone, and keep it in a secure place. On the drive home, Megan pondered the situation. She still lacked the hard proof needed for serious accusations. Valerie could argue that Ian withdrew the money at her request, or that a stranger somehow learned the PIN. She needed ironclad evidence. A surprise was waiting for her at home. On the kitchen counter lay a note from her husband. Sunshine. Mom was rushed to the doctor. Went with her. Will be home late. Heat up the soup. Love you, Ian. Megan crumpled the paper and threw it in the trash. Valerie rarely got sick and was highly skeptical of doctors, preferring home remedies. It was a suspiciously convenient coincidence right on the day her daughter-in-law might start asking uncomfortable questions. Ian came home late, exhausted and quiet. How's your mom? Megan asked, feigning concern. Nothing serious. Blood pressure spiked. Doctor told her to rest more. I drove her home, helped around the house. What exactly did you help with? Ian looked at his wife in surprise. Well, brought in groceries, bought her meds. Why? Just curious. Her husband shrugged and went to take a shower. Megan remained in the kitchen with a growing feeling that she was being played for a fool. Both Valerie and Ian had been acting strangely these past few days, as if hiding something major. The next day, Megan took a personal day off work, citing illness. The plan had formed during the night, while she lay awake, replaying recent events in her head. If Valerie was indeed secretly visiting their apartment, it needed to be caught on tape. In the morning, after Ian left for work, Megan went to an electronics store. The sales associate, a young guy in jeans and a hoodie, enthusiastically showed her various security camera models. This one is perfect for apartments. He picked up a small device the size of a coin. Battery lasts up to 5 days. Records to an SD card. High-def quality. You can hide it anywhere behind books, behind a picture frame, in a potted plant. Does it record audio? Absolutely. Video and audio. Plus, you can set it to motion activation, save storage and battery. Megan bought 2 of those and one larger camera disguised as a standard digital desk clock. At home, she spent almost 2 hours finding the optimal spots to hide them. She secured one tiny camera behind books on the living room shelf, angling it to cover the hallway and the front door. She hid the second one in the bedroom, camouflaging it among souvenirs on the dresser. The clock camera went into the kitchen. After setting the devices to record upon detecting motion, Megan tested the system. On her phone screen, through a special app, she could see every corner of the apartment. If Valerie really did come in while they were gone, it would be on tape. Megan decided not to tell Ian about the cameras for now. If he was innocent, he could find out later. If he was guilty, warning him would ruin the whole operation. The cameras remained silent for the first 2 days. Valerie didn't show up, and Megan started to think she had wasted her money on electronic surveillance. Maybe her mother-in-law really had only come by that one time, and for a legitimate reason. But on Thursday, while Megan was at an important presentation, and Ian claimed to be at a job site all day, the cameras finally triggered. That evening, Megan opened the app and saw recordings from 1:03 p.m. to 2:27 p.m. Her heart raced when Valerie's familiar figure appeared on screen. Her mother-in-law entered the apartment using a key, looked around, and took off her shoes. No rushing, no hesitation. She acted like she lived there. Then she pulled a small notebook from her purse and began methodically walking through the rooms. Megan watched the footage in growing astonishment. Valerie opened dresser drawers, photographed their contents with her phone, and wrote things down in her notebook. She examined the bedroom especially thoroughly, digging through the entire jewelry box, photographing every ring and pair of earrings. She spent several minutes reading documents in the nightstand, but the real shock came when she saw her mother-in-law locate the home safe. Valerie walked straight to the bookshelf without hesitation, moved the correct books aside, and opened the metal door. She punched in the code flawlessly, as if she knew it by heart. "This is impossible," Megan whispered, watching her mother-in-law count the bills and photograph the inside of the safe. But the most stunning part was yet to come. Valerie pulled a bank card out of her purse. Megan's old card, the one that had just been reissued, inspected it carefully in the light, and put it back. That meant the card wasn't lost by accident. Her mother-in-law had intentionally stolen it. On the footage, Valerie spent over an hour in the apartment. She inspected literally every corner, looked into all the closets, even checked the high storage cabinets. She photographed everything, wrote everything down. This wasn't a spontaneous theft. It was meticulous reconnaissance. Before leaving, Valerie carefully put everything back in its place, wiped away any traces of her presence, and locked the door. She wore an expression of deep satisfaction. Megan watched the recording several times, unable to believe her eyes. The sweet elderly woman who had always been so kind and delicate was, in fact, a real thief, an experienced, methodical burglar. But how did she know the safe code? Megan had come up with it herself and never told anyone. It was her parents' wedding anniversary. Highly personal information. Unless Ian had somehow figured out the code and given it to his mother, the thought hit her like a bucket of ice water. Was her husband involved in the thefts? No. That was too horrible to be true. There had to be another explanation. Megan decided to continue her surveillance. Over the next few days, she closely monitored the camera feeds, but Valerie didn't return. However, Megan noticed something else. On Friday evening, while she and Ian were having dinner in the kitchen, her husband suddenly asked, "Are you going to work tomorrow? Or do you have the day off? Working until noon." "Why?" "Just wondering. Maybe we can go somewhere in the afternoon?" On Saturday, Megan intentionally went to work but came back home an hour later, claiming she felt sick. The cameras revealed a fascinating scene. At 11 a.m., Ian was talking on his phone in the kitchen. "Yeah, Mom, she's at work until 2. "No, I didn't touch the safe, just like we agreed. Her car keys are on the hook in the hallway." "Okay, call me when you're done." Megan listened to the recording 3 times. There was no room left for doubt. Ian was coordinating his mother's visits, feeding her information about his wife's schedule. He knew about the safe. He wasn't just aware of the thefts. He was actively participating in them. This discovery hurt worse than the theft itself. Jewelry and money can be replaced. But how do you regain trust in the person you've lived with for 8 years? On Sunday, Valerie came over as usual, bringing cabbage pies and sitting down for tea, chatting sweetly about the weather and her neighbors. Megan looked at her and couldn't believe this pleasant woman had been searching their apartment like a professional burglar just days ago. "Megan, dear, you have such a beautiful jewelry box," her mother-in-law said, stirring sugar into her tea. "I accidentally saw it when I walked past the bedroom. So many pretty little things." "Yes, I have a few pieces," Megan replied cautiously. "And where do you keep the expensive jewelry?" "Probably in a bank vault." Ian choked on his tea. "Mom, why do you need to know that?" "Just curious." "Martha, my neighbor, had her place robbed recently. They cleared out all her gold. She says she should have kept it in the bank." Megan closely observed her mother-in-law's face. Valerie looked completely sincere, but Megan now knew what an actress this woman could be. "We keep it at home for now," Megan answered. "In a safe?" "Ah, so you do have a safe." "Very smart. I bet the code is complicated, right?" "Complicated enough," Megan replied dryly, shooting a glance at her husband. Ian was nervously shredding a napkin, avoiding his wife's eyes. His behavior fully convinced Megan that her husband was well aware of his mother's criminal tendencies. After Valerie left, the couple was alone. Megan washed the dishes, contemplating her next move. Accuse her husband of being an accomplice directly. But then he would warn his mother, and catching her red-handed would be impossible. It was better to continue observing and gather more evidence. "Ian," she said without turning from the sink, "do you tell your mom about my work schedule? When I'm home, when I'm at the office?" "Sometimes. What's the big deal? She just seems very well informed about my hours." "Well, she takes an interest in our lives. That's normal." Megan nodded and stayed silent. Ian thought it was normal to update his mother on every detail of their daily routine. She wondered if he thought it was normal that his mother used that information to rob them. On Monday, the situation took another turn. Megan was working at the office when Ian called. "Sunshine," I was thinking. "Maybe we really shouldn't keep large sums of cash at home. What if we get robbed?" Where should we keep it then? I don't know. In a bank. Or maybe you can leave some of the money with my mom. It's safe there. She never leaves the house. Megan almost laughed out loud in indignation. Ian was suggesting she entrust her savings to the exact woman who was stealing them. The audacity was off the charts. Ian, why the sudden concern? Did something happen? No, I just saw a news segment about apartment burglaries. Got me thinking. I see. I'll think about your suggestion. That evening, Megan reviewed all the camera footage again. The picture was getting clearer. Valerie wasn't just stealing small things. She was planning a massive heist. She had systematically studied the apartment's contents, found out where the valuables were kept, and tracked the owner's schedules. And Ian was actively helping her, feeding her his wife's schedule, convincing her to keep cash at home for convenience, and now suggesting she move the money directly to his mother's house. A classic family fraud scheme. But what shocked Megan the most was what she saw on Tuesday's recording. Valerie had brought a man into the apartment. An unfamiliar man in his 50s, wearing a worn jacket and a knit beanie. They inspected the apartment together. The man took notes in a notepad and photographed the locks and windows. "This is a breeze," he said, examining the front door. "Simple lock. Neighbors aren't nosy. The main thing is knowing exactly when the owners are gone." "That's not a problem," Valerie replied. "My son tells me everything. Their schedule is consistent. She works until 6, he works until 7. On Wednesday, they're both going to the cabin. I suggested it on purpose." Megan's blood ran cold. Her mother-in-law was planning to burglarize their apartment with the help of a professional thief, and Ian had been helping the whole time by supplying the necessary intel. The man on the tape carefully examined the safe. "How much is usually in there?" "I don't know exactly, but a lot. She sets money aside every month, been saving for years." "My son says she's saving up for a new condo." "Got it. Know the code?" "My son found out. It's her parents' wedding anniversary." "Perfect. We hit it on Wednesday then." Wednesday. That was the day after tomorrow. Megan looked at her calendar. Indeed, she and Ian were scheduled to drive out to his mother's cabin to help with winter canning. Valerie herself had suggested the trip a week ago. Now everything fell into place. The cabin trip was Valerie's alibi and the perfect window to rob the apartment while they were gone. Ian might not even know about the ultimate goal, perhaps thinking he was just helping his mother with petty theft. But Valerie was planning to clear out all the savings in one go. Megan turned off the video and leaned back in her chair. The situation had gone too far. She needed to act, and act immediately. But how? Call the police? The evidence was obtained illegally. The cameras were installed without the consent of all residents. Plus, Ian would definitely deny his involvement and protect his mother. Catch the thieves red-handed? That was dangerous, especially since a professional burglar was involved. Or set a trap. Let Valerie believe the grand heist was successful, and then expose her. Megan stayed up all night plotting her next move. By morning, her decision was made. She would give the thief the opportunity to steal the maximum amount, but in a way that guaranteed she'd get her money back and secure irrefutable proof of guilt. To do this, she had to play the role of the trusting victim for a few more days. Pretend she suspected nothing, agree to the cabin trip, leave the money in the safe, and then unleash a storm so fierce that both Valerie and Ian would remember it for the rest of their lives. At breakfast, Megan said to her husband, "You know, I thought about what you said about the money. You're right. Maybe we shouldn't keep such a large amount at home." Ian perked up. "See? I told you. Where are you thinking of moving it?" "I haven't decided yet. After the trip to your mom's, I'll think it over properly." Speaking of the trip, did she call to confirm Wednesday? Said the apples are still waiting. Need to be processed immediately. Sounds good. What time are we leaving? Early, around 8 a.m. Megan nodded and continued eating her breakfast. Ian had no idea his wife knew the true purpose of this trip. He sincerely believed they were going to help his mother with chores, unaware that she was planning to rob their apartment at that exact time. Or maybe he did know? Maybe he was a conscious participant in the conspiracy. That question tormented Megan the most. She wanted to believe Ian was just naive and manipulated by his mother, but the evidence spoke against him. On Tuesday evening, Megan prepared the final surprise for the thief. She took all her savings out of the safe and carefully laid them out on the table. $47,000 in large bills. An absolute fortune for an average family. But instead of hiding the money in the bank, Megan did something else. She wrote down the serial numbers of every single bill in a special notebook. It took 2 hours, but now she could legally prove that these specific bills belonged to her. In addition, Megan prepared a trap. Inside one of the stacks of cash, she slipped a special device, a microscopic GPS tracker she had bought from the same electronics store. If the money was stolen, she could track its exact location. On Wednesday morning, the couple drove to Valerie's cabin as planned. Her mother-in-law greeted them joyfully, set the table, and showed them the apple harvest that urgently needed to be turned into juice and jam. Megan played the role of the carefree daughter-in-law, helping in the kitchen, laughing at Valerie's stories about her neighbors, while secretly knowing that at this very moment, a burglar was ransacking her apartment, stealing all her savings. Around 2 p.m., Ian said, "Mom, maybe we should head home? We still have a lot to do." "Of course, son. Thank you so much for helping. I couldn't have done it alone." On the drive back, Megan checked the tracking app. The device showed the money was moving across the city. The heist had been executed. "Ian," she said to her husband, "let's stop at the mall. We need groceries." "Why?" "We have plenty of food at home. I want something nice after such a long workday." Ian agreed, and they spent another hour wandering the stores. Megan was intentionally stalling, giving the thieves time to get away. When they finally returned home, the apartment looked completely normal. No signs of forced entry. Everything was in its place. Only an experienced eye would notice that someone had meticulously cleaned up after themselves. Megan walked into the bedroom and opened the safe. As expected, it was empty. "Ian!" she screamed. "Get in here, quick!" Her husband came running, looking terrified. "What happened?" "The safe is empty. All the money is gone." Ian acted shocked so naturally that Megan almost believed he was innocent. Almost. "How? Who could have known the code?" "I don't know. Maybe someone saw me type it in, or guessed it." They called the police, filed a report, and answered all the questions. The detective promised to open an investigation, but didn't offer much hope. Residential burglaries were rarely solved. That evening, after the police left, and Ian went to inform his mother about the tragedy, Megan checked the tracker. The money was located at a private house on the outskirts of the city. She wrote down the address and prepared for the final phase of her plan. Tomorrow, she would strike back, and both Valerie and her accomplice would learn who they messed with, and along the way, she would find out exactly how deeply Ian was involved. Megan went to bed with a firm resolve to restore justice at any cost. 8 years of marriage might end tomorrow, but a bitter truth was better than a sweet lie. The time for reckoning was near. Megan woke up at dawn with the feeling that today, her life would change forever. The tracker showed that the stolen money had remained at the same suburban house all night. That meant the thieves felt safe and weren't in a hurry to fence the cash. Ian was still asleep, his arms sprawled out, snoring softly. Looking at her husband, Megan tried to pinpoint exactly when he stopped being the man she had married. Or had he always been like this, and she just never noticed? At breakfast, Ian looked concerned. "Sunshine, I keep thinking about yesterday. Maybe we really should move? What if those burglars come back?" "Move where?" "You can't buy a condo with the savings gone." "Well, we could take out a loan. Or move in with Mom temporarily." Megan barely contained a bitter laugh. Ian was continuing to play the caring husband, even after his mother had stolen their life savings. "I'll think about it," she said. "First, we need to sort out the theft." "What's there to sort out?" "The police said there's little chance of finding it. I'll try looking myself." Ian frowned. "Megan, don't do anything stupid. These people could be dangerous." "What people?" "You know, the thieves. Criminals." Megan nodded and finished her coffee. Her husband continued to feign ignorance, even though he knew exactly who stole the money. After Ian left for work, Megan put her plan into action. First, she went to the bank and withdrew the rest of her savings from a separate deposit account, $47,000 in large bills. This was the exact sum she planned to use as bait. At home, Megan laid the money out on the kitchen counter and photographed every stack. She wrote the serial numbers in the same notebook she had used for the previously stolen bills. Inside one of the stacks, she slipped another GPS tracker, but this time she activated a secondary feature, an audio alarm that could be triggered remotely. She hid the money in a new stash, a coffee tin placed on the kitchen shelf among other spices and grains. It was in plain sight, but not entirely obvious. Exactly the kind of spot an experienced thief would find during a thorough search. Next, Megan set up additional cameras. Now, every corner of the apartment was under surveillance, including the kitchen where the bait was hidden. She paid special attention to audio recording. Every conversation needed to be captured with crystal clarity. By 11 a.m., everything was ready. Megan changed into her work suit, grabbed her bag, and loudly slammed the front door, imitating leaving for work. In reality, she only went down to the first floor and hid in the building superintendent's supply closet. Kind Gloria, who had worked there for years, let her wait in her tiny office. "Megan, what are you hiding in here for?" the super whispered. "Husband won't find out?" "Gloria, I suspect we've had burglars breaking in. I want to catch them." "Oh, dear Lord. Wouldn't it be better to call the police? I need to make sure I'm not wrong first." The older woman shook her head but didn't argue. Working in building management, she had seen it all, so strange requests from tenants didn't shock her. Megan sat in the office, monitoring the cameras on her phone. At 12:07 p.m., Valerie's familiar figure appeared on screen. Her mother-in-law was walking down the hallway briskly, looking around. She was carrying a large duffel bag. "Here we go," Megan whispered, hitting the record button. Valerie opened the apartment door with her keys and stepped inside. First, she listened closely, making sure no one was home. Then she quickly took off her shoes and walked into the kitchen. "All right, where is the new stash?" she muttered, opening drawers and cabinets. Megan watched as her mother-in-law methodically searched the kitchen. Valerie clearly knew she was looking for the money that was supposed to replace yesterday's stolen funds. Apparently, someone had tipped her off that Megan had gone to the bank. The search took about half an hour. Finally, Valerie reached the spice rack and found the coffee tin. She shook it, heard the rustle of paper, and smiled in satisfaction. "There you are, my pretty," she said, pulling out the stacks of cash. Megan clenched her fists. Hearing her mother-in-law speak so casually about stealing her savings was unbearable. Valerie counted the money and stuffed it into her bag. Then she pulled out her phone and called someone. "Vince, the job's done. Pick me up in 10 minutes out front." "Yes, everything went according to plan. 47,000. "Of course I'm sure. I counted it myself." So, her mother-in-law had an accomplice named Vince, the same man Megan had seen on the video. Valerie was probably about to leave, but her phone rang again. "Hello? Ian." "Yeah, I'm sitting at home. Haven't gone anywhere." "What? Megan left work early? When?" "Understood. Thanks for the heads up." Megan's blood ran cold. Ian was calling his mother to warn her about his wife coming home. That meant he really was in on the conspiracy. He wasn't just passing on information out of naivete. He was actively coordinating the thief's actions. Valerie quickly hid her phone and headed for the exit, but Megan was already climbing the stairs. She timed it perfectly, colliding with her mother-in-law right at the apartment door. "Valerie," Megan exclaimed, feigning surprise. "What an unexpected surprise. I got off work early. I had a terrible headache." Her mother-in-law froze for a second, clutching the bag with the stolen money tightly against her chest. "Oh, Megan, I was just watering the flowers on the balcony. Ian asked me to." "What flowers? We don't have any flowers on the balcony." "Oh, right. I got confused. I was watering the indoor plants." Megan pulled out her keys and opened the door. "Come on in. Let's not stand in the hallway." Valerie shifted nervously from foot to foot. "Oh, no. I really should be going. Lots of chores waiting for me at home. At least let's have some tea. I rarely catch you at home." Without waiting for an answer, Megan took her mother-in-law by the arm and led her into the apartment. Valerie couldn't resist without raising suspicion. In the kitchen, Megan turned on the kettle and turned to her guest. "What's with the huge bag? A gym bag?" "Oh, this? Just some old things. Taking them up to the cabin. In this cold weather?" "It's October." "Well, gotta prep for winter. Cover some things up, clean around." Megan nodded and continued preparing tea, all the while thinking of the best way to expose the thief. She could demand to see inside the bag, but then Valerie would try to talk her way out of it. It was better to let her dig herself deeper into her lies. "Valerie, do you often come over when we're not home?" Her mother-in-law tensed. "No, what do you mean? Why would I come here without you? The neighbor mentioned she saw you at our door on Tuesday afternoon." "The neighbor is mistaken. I was at the cabin on Tuesday, pressing apples. But we went to the cabin together on Wednesday." "Oh, right. Of course. My brain is just mush lately." Megan poured the tea, carefully watching her mother-in-law's face. Valerie was visibly sweating, checking her watch constantly, and gripping her bag even tighter. "What's rustling in your bag?" Megan asked, sitting across from her. "Sounds like paper. Old newspapers. Taking them to the cabin for kindling." "I see. Can I take a look? Maybe there's an interesting crossword in there." "Why do you need old newspapers?" "There's nothing interesting in there." Megan stood up and reached for the bag. "I'm curious anyway." Valerie yanked the bag away. "Megan, don't touch it. It's dusty and dirty." Funny, newspapers aren't usually that dusty. The tension in the kitchen was peaking. Valerie realized she was a suspect, but continued to play the innocent old lady. "Megan, dear, I really must go. My bus leaves soon." "What bus? You don't take the bus to the cabin." No, I have to stop by the store first." Then the cabin. Megan decided she was done playing cat and mouse. It was time for decisive action. "Valerie, open the bag." "What? Why?" "I want to see what's inside." "I told you, newspapers." "Then show me the newspapers." Her mother-in-law stood up from her chair. "Megan, you are acting very strangely. I am leaving." But Megan blocked her path to the door. "You are not going anywhere until you show me what's in that bag." "How dare you? I am your mother-in-law." "Does that give you the right to steal?" Valerie tried to push her daughter-in-law aside to reach the exit, but Megan was younger and stronger. "Give me the bag." "No, it's mine." "Yours? And where did you get $47,000? Valerie's face turned white. She realized she was caught. I don't know what you're talking about." "You know exactly what I'm talking about. You stole that money from my stash." "I didn't steal anything. And besides, my son told me I could take whatever I want from your apartment." Megan froze. There it was. The exact phrase that explained everything. Ian really had given his mother permission to steal. "Ian said you could steal our money?" "Not steal, take. There's a difference." "And what exactly is the difference?" "The difference is, my son allowed me to. Therefore, it's not theft." Megan slowly nodded. "I see. Your son told you that you could take whatever you want from our apartment." "Yes, exactly." "Wonderful. Well, your son told me I could take whatever I want from you." And with those words, Megan sharply ripped the bag out of her stunned mother-in-law's hands. "What are you doing?" "Give that back immediately." "Why?" "You just said I was allowed to take whatever I want." Megan unzipped the bag and pulled out the stacks of cash. But aside from her $47,000, there were a lot of other interesting things inside. Jewelry, rings, earrings, necklaces, bracelets clearly not belonging to Valerie, judging by the variety of styles and ring sizes, several expensive men's watches. An engraved lighter that read, "To my loving husband, from Sarah." Antique coins and protective sleeves. "Valerie, what is all this?" Her mother-in-law tried to snatch the bag back. "Those are my things. Stay out of my business." "My money mixed in with your things makes it my business." "Where did you get all this jewelry? Are you a collector?" They were gifts. Interesting gifts. Men's watches, wedding bands in different sizes, children's gold earrings. You have a very active imagination. Megan continued inspecting the contents of the bag. In a separate pocket, there were handwritten notes, addresses of apartments, residents' work schedules, diagrams of where valuables were kept. It was a literal filing system for a professional burglar. And what is this? Your work ledger? Valerie stayed silent, realizing she was completely cornered. Megan pulled Valerie's wallet out of the bag and opened it. Inside was about $1,500 in cash and several credit cards under different names. Valerie, whose cards are these? More gifts? Give me back my wallet. This is robbery. Robbery? And what you were doing in my apartment, what do you call that? That's different. I had permission. Megan grabbed her mother-in-law's wallet and phone. Well, I have permission too. Your son said I could take whatever I want from you. Valerie shrieked. Thief! Mugger! Give me my things back right now. I won't. And you know what? If you are not out of my apartment in 5 minutes, I will call the police and show them all of this. Megan pointed to the jewelry and notes scattered across the table. I think they'll be very interested to know where a pensioner got such an extensive collection of stolen goods. Valerie's face dropped. She clearly hadn't anticipated this turn of events. You wouldn't dare. Ian will never forgive you. We'll see about that. Now get out, and never set foot in our apartment again. Otherwise, I'll file a report not just for theft, but for breaking and entering. Valerie realized the game was lost. She grabbed her coat and rushed to the door, shouting threats over her shoulder. You'll regret this. I'll tell Ian everything. He'll find out what kind of person you really are. Tell him, Megan answered calmly. I have a few things to tell him too. The door slammed. Megan was left alone with the stolen money and physical evidence that her mother-in-law was a professional thief. She sat at the kitchen table and tried to process what had just happened. She was holding not just her $47,000, but a pile of stolen jewelry. That meant Valerie was robbing not just them, but other people too. And Ian? How deeply was he involved in his mother's crimes? The answer to that question arrived half an hour later. Her husband burst into the apartment, red with rage. Megan, what did you do to my mother? I caught her stealing and took back what she stole. What stealing? What are you talking about? Ian, don't play dumb. I know everything. Her husband looked around in confusion. Know what? I know you gave your mother the keys to our apartment. I know you told her my work schedule. I know you helped her plan the burglaries. That's not true. You don't understand. Then, explain it to me. Ian sank into a chair and buried his face in his hands. Megan, this is very complicated. I have time. Her husband stayed silent for a long time, gathering his thoughts. Finally, he looked up. Mom, she blackmailed me. With what? I had an incident in the past. Before we got married, I got into some trouble at work. Forged some documents. Nothing serious. I just altered my seniority records to get a higher salary bracket. Megan frowned. And so, I almost got fired. Mom helped sweep it under the rug. She had connections at my firm, but she kept the documents. What documents? Photocopies of the forged records with my signatures. Mom said if she showed them to management, I wouldn't just get fired, I'd get sued. Megan felt a cold, hard fury building inside her. Ian was justifying his participation in the thefts with his mother's blackmail. And because of that, you helped her rob our apartment? I didn't know she would have been stealing. She just asked me to tell her about our lives. Your work schedule. She said she was just worrying about us. And why did you give her the keys? She said she wanted to come over sometimes to clean, to make surprise dinners for us. I thought there was nothing wrong with that. Ian, you are a grown man. How could you believe those fairy tales? I didn't want trouble at work, you understand? If the story with the documents got out, I'd lose my job. Megan stood up and walked to the window. Outside, a light drizzle was falling, and the city looked gray and uninviting. Ian, and the safe code? Did you just accidentally tell your mother that too? She interrogated me. Said if something happened in the apartment, she needed to know where the important documents were kept. And you believed her. Megan, please try to understand. I was in a desperate situation. She turned to her husband. Desperate? Ian, you could have just told me the truth. We would have found a way out together. I was terrified you'd leave me over the forged documents. That is nothing compared to what happened after. Ian stood up and walked over to his wife. Sunshine. Let's forget all of this. I will cut off all contact with my mom. We will start a new life. Ian, do you realize your mother is a professional thief? She had jewelry from dozens of apartments in her bag. That's impossible. Maybe you helped her with those too? I didn't know. Didn't know? Or didn't want to know? Ian fell silent. Megan saw that he genuinely didn't suspect the scale of his mother's criminal enterprise, but that didn't excuse him. Ian, I am exhausted by all these lies. What lies? I just explained everything. 8 years of marriage, and I knew nothing about you. Not about the forged documents, not about the blackmail, not about the fact that you are terrified of your own mother. Megan, I wanted to protect you. Protect me? You let your mother rob me blind. You call that protection? Ian dropped to his knees right in the middle of the kitchen. Forgive me, I was an idiot. It will never happen again. Get up. Don't humiliate yourself. Megan, I'll buy you flowers. We'll go on vacation. I'll do whatever you want. Ian, get up and listen to me very carefully. Her husband rose from the floor. His face was wet with tears. I am filing for divorce. What? No. Megan, we can fix this. Nothing can be fixed. I've lived for 8 years with a man I don't know. You lied to me, hid your past, helped steal my money. This is all Mom's fault. She forced me. Ian, you are 45 years old. Stop blaming your mommy for your problems. Megan walked into the bedroom and pulled a suitcase out of the closet. What are you doing? Packing your things. You are moving out today. Megan, this is our apartment. No, this is my apartment. I bought it with my own money. Remember? Ian tried to hug his wife. Sunshine. Let's talk calmly. Maybe I'll hire a lawyer, deal with Mom's issues. Do not touch me. Megan's voice was so cold that Ian backed away. Are you serious? Absolutely. By Monday, I will file the papers in court. But what about our love? 8 years together. Megan stopped in the middle of the room. What love, Ian? You betrayed me. You allowed your mother to humiliate and rob me. And when I found out the truth, you started making excuses and blaming others. I'll be better. It's too late. Trust cannot be repaired. Ian packed his things and left, continuing to swear his love and beg for forgiveness until the very last second. Megan walked him to the door and locked the deadbolt. Left alone, she felt a bizarre sense of relief. For the first time in months, she could be herself. She didn't have to pretend, didn't have to suspect every creak in the house. On the table lay her $47,000 and a mountain of stolen jewelry. Tomorrow, she would take it all to the police and give a detailed statement regarding Valerie Dawson's criminal activities. For now, Megan sat in the armchair by the window and tried to process her feelings. Pain? Yes, a little. Anger? Definitely. But most of all, liberation. She had spent 8 years building a family with a man capable of betrayal. Better to find out now than to live a lie her entire life. Her phone rang. It was her mother. Megan, honey, how are things? We haven't talked in a while. Mom, I have news. I'm divorcing Ian. What happened? Megan gave her a brief rundown of the past few days' events. Her mother listened in silence, occasionally gasping in shock. Honey, maybe you shouldn't rush? The man admitted his mistake. He's remorseful. Mom, he lied to me for 8 years. But he loved you. If he loved me, he wouldn't have let his mother rob me. Her mother sighed. Well, you're an adult. It's your decision. But think about it again. It's going to be hard alone. Mom, it's better to be alone than with someone you can't trust. After talking to her mother, Megan felt exhausted. The day had been brutal, but she had survived it. She restored justice, defended her rights, and made a difficult but correct decision. That evening, she made a simple dinner, scrambled eggs and toast, and ate it at the kitchen table. The very same table where she had exposed her thief of a mother-in-law just hours earlier. Tomorrow, a new life would begin. Without Ian, without Valerie, without constant tension and suspicion. It wouldn't be easy a divorce, dividing up the minor joint assets, explaining things to friends and colleagues. But Megan had no regrets about her decision. She grabbed a notebook and wrote down a to-do list for tomorrow, Monday. Take the jewelry to the police. File a report against Valerie. Contact a divorce attorney. Change the apartment locks. Block Ian's access to all joint bank accounts. The list was extensive, but manageable. Megan had always been good at planning and achieving her goals. Right now, her goal was simple: start her life over, free of lies and betrayal. At 10 p.m., Ian called. "Megan, I'm at a hotel. I'm begging you again. Let's think about this calmly." "Ian, I've already thought about it. I'm going to my lawyer tomorrow." "Sunshine, maybe we can see a couples therapist? Work on our relationship." "What relationship?" "Ian, you helped your mother rob me." "I explained that. I was being blackmailed." "And? Is that an excuse?" Ian was silent for a long time, then said quietly, "Megan, I know I made a mistake, but do 8 years mean absolutely nothing? They mean something. They taught me that you cannot build a family on a foundation of lies. There will be no more lies. I promise. Ian, you promised to love and protect me. Remember? At the altar? Look how well you kept that promise." Her husband went silent again. He had no answer. "Good night, Ian. My lawyer will contact you tomorrow." Megan hung up and turned off her phone. Enough talking for today. Before going to sleep, she reviewed the security camera footage one more time. Valerie acted in a stranger's apartment like she owned the place, calm, methodical, without a hint of hesitation. Clearly an experienced burglar for whom theft was routine. And Ian? In the recorded phone calls, he didn't sound like a blackmail victim. He sounded like a willing accomplice. He relayed his wife's schedule with way too much detail, discussed the plans with way too much interest. Megan saved all the recordings onto multiple external drives. Tomorrow, this evidence would assist the police in their investigation and her lawyer in the divorce proceedings. As she lay down to sleep, she thought about how her life was about to change. She would have to get used to being alone, reorganize her daily routine, and explain the reasons for the divorce to acquaintances. Some would surely judge her, whispering that she destroyed her family over money. But Megan knew the truth. Money didn't destroy her family. Lies did. Betrayal. Her husband's inability to protect his wife from his own mother. Outside the window, it was raining. The drops drummed against the glass, creating a soothing rhythm. Megan closed her eyes and, for the first time in months, fell into a peaceful sleep. In the morning, she was woken by a phone call. It was the police. "Miss Miller, this is Detective Hayes. Regarding your burglary report, we have detained the suspect, Valerie Dawson." "Yes?" She was attempting to pawn jewelry that had been reported stolen. "During a search of her home, we found a massive cache of stolen goods." Megan wasn't surprised. A professional burglar couldn't have limited herself to just one family. And what is she saying? She denies everything. Claims the jewelry was given to her as gifts by various people, but she has no proof. "Did you review the security camera footage I sent?" "We did. Very compelling evidence. With these materials, this case is absolutely going to trial." Megan felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Justice would prevail, and Valerie would pay the price for her crimes. And what about her son, the suspect Ian Dawson? He will be brought in for questioning as a witness today. It's highly likely he will be charged as an accomplice. "I understand. Thank you for the update." Megan hung up and felt like she could finally exhale. The hardest part was behind her. Now, she just had to finalize the divorce and begin her new life. On Monday, she met with her lawyer. An experienced, middle-aged attorney named Samuel Patterson listened to Megan's story and shook his head. These cases, unfortunately, are not uncommon. Family fraud happens more often than people think, and the divorce, it won't be as complicated as you might fear. No? The condo is in your name. The income is primarily yours. Ian is highly unlikely to contest the assets when he's facing criminal conspiracy charges. So it will be quick, 3 or 4 months, maybe faster if he signs uncontested. Megan nodded. 3 months wasn't that long after 8 years of marriage. Walking out of the lawyer's office, she ran into Ian on the street. He was waiting near the building entrance, holding a bouquet of roses. "Megan, we have to talk." "We don't." "Talk to my lawyer." "Sunshine, I found the documents Mom was using to blackmail me. It turns out the statute of limitations on them expired years ago. She was just scaring me. Megan stopped. And how does that change anything? It changes everything. It means I helped her for nothing. I was tricked. Ian, you are a grown man. You could have checked, consulted a lawyer. I was scared. I thought it was better not to risk it. And now you aren't scared? Now I realize I was an idiot. Megan looked at her soon-to-be ex-husband. He looked genuinely remorseful, but it was far too late. Ian, even if you were tricked by your mom, it doesn't change the core issue. You didn't trust me with your problems. You allowed strangers to interfere in our family, and you hid vital information. I'll be better. It's too late to be better. Trust cannot be refunded. Ian held out the flowers. Megan, I love you, and I don't love you anymore. The words sounded quieter than she intended, but they were firm. Megan surprised herself by realizing it was the absolute truth. Her love had died the exact moment she saw the security camera footage. At all? Ian asked quietly. There's nothing left. Just sadness that things could have been different. Ian lowered the bouquet. So it really is over. Yes. What am I supposed to do now? Megan shrugged. Live. Learn from your mistakes. Don't let anyone manipulate you ever again. And Mom? She's going to go to prison. Your mom is a grown woman. Let her answer for her own actions. But she's elderly. Ian, your mom is a professional burglar. She robbed dozens of people. Age has nothing to do with it. Ian nodded and stepped aside to throw the flowers into a trash can. Megan, what if you had found out about the blackmail right away? Would we have made it? She thought about it. Maybe. But you never gave me that chance. Forgive me. I forgive you. But that doesn't mean we can be together. Ian nodded and walked away, slouching under the drizzling rain. Megan watched him go and felt a strange emptiness. Not regret, just an emptiness, as if an important chapter of her life had finally closed. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. Valerie Dawson was sentenced to 4 years in state prison. Ian was given probation as an accomplice, but he didn't appeal the sentence. Megan sold the 2-bedroom condo and bought a 1-bedroom in a newly developed neighborhood in Seattle. She invested the remaining money. Work was going great. Her management highly valued her responsibility and professionalism. She put her personal life on hold for the time being. She needed time for her emotional wounds to heal, to learn how to trust people again. Sometimes, Megan wondered what would have happened if she hadn't noticed her mother-in-law's strange behavior in time. How much more money would have been stolen? How long would the lies have continued? But those thoughts brought no regret. Better a bitter truth than a sweet lie. Better loneliness than betrayal. A year passed. Megan had settled into her new life. She made friends with her neighbors, signed up for language classes. Life was getting better, even if it wasn't exactly what she had planned 8 years ago. One evening, she received a call from an unknown number. Miss Miller, this is Samuel Patterson, the attorney. I was asked to contact you by Ian Dawson. Regarding what? He would like to meet and speak with you. He says he has important information. Megan considered this. Can't he pass it through you? He insists on a personal meeting. He promises it will take no more than half an hour. Fine. Tomorrow at the cafe on 4th Avenue, 7 p.m. The next day, Megan arrived at the designated place. Ian was waiting for her at a table by the window. He had changed dramatically over the past year. He had lost weight, aged, and his hair was graying. Thank you for agreeing to meet. What did you want to tell me? Ian pulled a file folder out of his bag. I found out some more things about Mom's businesses. It turns out she wasn't just burglarizing places. She was running real estate scams. And the portion of the money she stole from your safe was used to buy an apartment under the name of a deceased person. I went to court and sued to have that property reclaimed. It's yours now. Megan was shocked. Why did you do that? I wanted to somehow make up for what I did. Ian, you don't owe me anything. I do. I betrayed you, and you were the best wife anyone could have ever asked for. Megan took the documents and flipped through them. It was true. An apartment valued at around $100,000 was now legally transferred into her name. Thank you. But this doesn't change anything between us. I know. I wasn't hoping it would. Then why? Ian gave a sad smile. I wanted to walk away with a clear conscience. Walk away where? I'm moving to a different state. Too many ghosts here. Megan nodded. She understood that feeling perfectly. Good luck to you, Ian. You too, Megan. You deserve to be happy. They said their goodbyes like old acquaintances, without resentment or reproach. Each went their separate ways. That evening at home, Megan reviewed the property documents again, an unexpected inheritance courtesy of her mother-in-law's crimes. Life sometimes takes the most unpredictable turns. She decided to sell the apartment and use the funds to fulfill a lifelong dream, opening her own business. A sales consulting agency, where she could leverage all her experience and knowledge. 6 months later, the business took off. Megan had a steady stream of clients. She had to hire an assistant. The work brought not just income, but deep satisfaction. Her personal life also improved. She met a man who valued her honesty and independence. They didn't rush into anything serious, but they didn't hide their mutual affection either. One day, walking past her old neighborhood, Megan saw Valerie Dawson. Her former mother-in-law was sitting on a bench outside an apartment building. She had likely been released early on parole for good behavior. She looked pathetic and incredibly old. Their eyes met. Valerie immediately looked down and hurriedly shuffled into the building. Megan felt no anger and no pity, just complete indifference toward the person who had once caused her so much pain. Life went on. Without drama and turmoil, but with a profound sense of self-worth and confidence in her future, Megan would never allow anyone to manipulate or deceive her again. She had chosen the difficult but honest path, and she didn't regret a single second of it. 2 more years flew by, carrying with them the last lingering shadows of Megan's past. Her consulting firm, Vanguard Sales Solutions, had grown from a one-woman operation into a thriving boutique agency in downtown Seattle. She now employed a team of 5 sharp, driven women. But Megan didn't just stop at corporate sales consulting. Drawing from the darkest chapter of her life, she launched a pro bono initiative, offering financial literacy and asset protection workshops for women navigating high-conflict divorces or family financial abuse. There was a profound, poetic justice in it. While Valerie had once run underground seminars, teaching women how to defraud and manipulate their families, Megan was now standing on brightly lit stages, teaching women how to build impenetrable financial boundaries and secure their independence. Her personal life had blossomed with the same steady, deliberate growth. The man she had been seeing, Ethan, turned out to be exactly what she hadn't known she needed. He was a lead architect for a cybersecurity firm, a man who inherently understood the value of firewalls, both digital and emotional. He never rushed her, never demanded more than she was ready to give, and, most importantly, he was deeply proud of her success. One crisp Friday evening in November, Megan was invited to be the keynote speaker at the annual Women in Leadership Summit at the Washington State Convention Center. The auditorium was packed with nearly 1,000 attendees. Standing behind the podium, wearing a tailored navy blue blazer, Megan looked out at the sea of faces. 8 years ago, she began, her voice steady and echoing through the grand hall, I believed that securing your future meant working hard, saving quietly, and trusting the people under your own roof. I learned the hard way that blind trust is not a financial strategy. I learned that sometimes the greatest threats to your livelihood aren't market crashes or corporate competitors, they are the people sitting across from you at the dinner table. She didn't name Ian or Valerie, but she shared the core lesson of her survival. She spoke about the illusion of safety, the necessity of having walk-away money, and the absolute, non-negotiable requirement of maintaining personal financial autonomy, no matter how much you love someone. When she finished, the room erupted into a standing ovation. Women were wiping tears from their eyes. Others were nodding with fierce, newfound determination. As Megan walked off the stage, Ethan was waiting for her in the wings. He pulled her into a warm, grounding embrace. You were incredible, he murmured against her hair. I think you just changed a few hundred lives out there. I just told them the truth. Megan smiled, feeling a familiar, comforting lightness in her chest. Later that night, they celebrated at a quiet, upscale rooftop restaurant overlooking the glittering Seattle skyline. The city lights reflected off the dark waters of Elliott Bay. They clinked their champagne glasses, celebrating her successful keynote and the closing of her firm's most profitable quarter yet. "I have a confession to make," Ethan said suddenly, setting his glass down. He reached into his leather briefcase sitting on the chair next to him and pulled out a sleek, black folder. Megan raised an eyebrow, a playful smirk on her lips. "If this is a sales pitch for your company's new encryption software, your timing is terrible." Ethan chuckled, but his eyes were incredibly sincere. "No software. But it is about security." He slid the folder across the white tablecloth. Megan opened it. Inside was a thick, legally binding document. The header read, "Prenuptial and Separate Property Agreement." She looked up at him, stunned. "I know your history, Megan," Ethan said softly, his voice unwavering. "I know what was taken from you, and I know how hard you fought to build this new life, brick by brick, entirely on your own. I never want you to spend a single second of your life wondering if your assets, your business, or your peace of mind are at risk with me." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, placing it gently on top of the legal documents. He opened it to reveal a stunning, elegant diamond ring. "I am not asking you to merge your life into mine, and I'm certainly not asking you to surrender your independence," Ethan continued, looking deeply into her eyes. "I am asking if you would do me the honor of building a future side by side, as equals, with ironclad boundaries, complete transparency, and absolute trust. Will you marry me, Megan?" Tears welled in Megan's eyes, but this time, they were tears of profound, overwhelming joy. It was the most romantic, deeply understanding proposal she could have ever imagined. Ethan didn't offer her a fairy tale of blind, foolish trust. He offered her a partnership based on profound respect for her trauma, her strength, and her autonomy. She looked at the prenuptial agreement, then at the ring, and finally at the man who truly saw her for who she was. "Yes," Megan whispered, a radiant smile breaking across her face. "Yes, Ethan, I will." He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Later, when they returned to her apartment, Megan walked out onto the balcony. The crisp night air felt invigorating. She looked down at the bustling streets of the city that had become her true home. She thought back to that rainy night years ago in her old kitchen, standing over a pile of stolen jewelry and a stack of cash, feeling like her entire world had been ripped apart by deceit. She had thought her life was over. In reality, it was just making room for the life she was actually meant to live. The $47,000 had been the bait that caught a thief, but it had also been the catalyst that set her free. She had lost an illusion, but she had gained the world. Megan took a deep breath, leaning against the railing as Ethan wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. There were no more ghosts hiding in the shadows, no more paranoia, no more forced smiles, no more hidden safes. Her life was exactly as it was meant to be, secure, successful, fiercely independent, and unequivocally, unapologetically hers.